session because your child might already know a lot of the sight words. They might have learned them in pre-K. So we're just here to give you some ideas of ways to extend their learning at home. What else can you do besides just practicing the sight words? And if they've already memorized them, what more can you do? So, So this is a really famous image. A lot of research has gone into this of how important it is for your child to read at home. So even if you think, oh, they're doing a great job reading, they don't need to read as much, or I don't need to read as much with them, it's still very important for them to still hear reading nightly, to build their vocabulary and how many words they'll hear. And you can look at all of this.
The standardized test one's crazy. Like if they read 20 minutes a day, they'll do better than 90% of their peers.
So
it's incredible.
Don't stop reading every night with them, even if they can read it on their own. And we have a very cool video that explains how to read with your child and a lot of the strategies that we do in the classroom. So, let's see if it'll work this time. Okay, wait.
If you like this video and want to be notified,
this is in our classroom, so we're like trying to figure out our technology. It's not easy to present when it's not your room. But there we all are.
Hi, this is Jennifer Gonzalez for Cult of Pedagogy. If you have a child between kindergarten and grade 2, it's likely that that child's teacher has assigned about 10, 20, or 30 minutes of reading per night for homework. In this video, we're going to talk about what parents and other caregivers can do to make sure this homework really helps your child become a better reader. The first thing you should do is sit side by side with your child while they read. Although it's really tempting to try to get other work done, the point of this homework is to have an adult following along. When you sit side by side, you can watch the words as she reads them. This allows you to give her immediate feedback when she needs it. Number 2 is don't tell the words. To learn how to decode words on her own, a child needs lots of time to wrestle with them. If you jump in to tell her what the words are, she'll miss the learning that comes from that struggle. Sometimes all you have to do is wait quietly, giving her time to figure a word out.
The snake charmer.
Good, yeah.
Sits in the front of a basket and begins to play a flute.
Number 3, move beyond sound it out. Just trying to sound out a word letter by letter is not the most effective way to figure out what the word is. There are tons of strategies for decoding a word. One way is to think about similar words. If she's trying to read the word rake, point out that it has a lot of the same letters as the word cake, a word she already knows. That can help her guess the right pronunciation for rake. Chunking is another strategy, breaking the word into bigger chunks rather than trying to sound out each individual letter. Finally, allow your child to use the pictures in the book to make a guess. Never cover up the pictures when your child is reading. They're important tools to help her figure out words independently. You can also try covering up part of a word to see if your child can read the other part first.
Is the cobra really dancing to the music? No, it can't even hear it. Snakes have no...
You stuck on that word? We take off the end of it, what's that?
Out.
That's out. And then outer. Good.
Ears.
Number 4, have your child reread some passages for fluency. If your child is merely sounding out individual words, she won't really get the meaning of a sentence. For the words to make sense together, they need to be read smoothly. So if your child takes a while to get through a particular sentence, have her go back and reread it so it makes more sense.
A long time ago, sailors thought these
of slowed down right there, so let's try to smooth this sentence out. A long time ago,
sailors thought this meant that someone was going to die.
Much nicer that time. Just be careful not to overdo it. Asking your child to repeat dozens of sentences in one session will drive her crazy. A few times is enough. And if she's struggling through most of every page, it's probably not the right book for her. Choose an easier one, or tell the teacher that she's struggling at this level. Number 5, allow some mistakes to go uncorrected. It's not necessary to correct every single error your child makes.
His headdress had the golden cobra on it.
Because the child is working hard to get the word headdress right, and then puts a lot of concentration into golden cobra, pointing out that she said the when she should have said would be too much of a distraction. Once she gets the more difficult words down, you can be more picky about making sure she reads all the words right. Number 6, allow your child to read the same book multiple times. If she reads a book on Monday and wants to read the same one again on Tuesday, that's okay. With each successive read, she'll get better and better at building her fluency. And by the end of the week, she should easily recognize words she struggled with at the beginning. Finally, you should keep reading to your child. Just because your child is learning how to read on her own, it doesn't mean she can't still learn a lot from listening to you read. By continuing to read to her for pleasure, you model correct pacing, reading with expression, and a love of books that will help make her a lifelong reader.
So that really explains a lot of the things that we do in the classroom in 5 minutes. Alright, so reading extensions. So once they know sight words, once they start to be able to sound out words and figure out what everything is saying, these are the next steps for them. So after reading a nonfiction text, ask your child the following question. What is the main idea and details of the book? So that's probably the most common one that we ask for the nonfiction text. So for example, if the book is Where Do Plants Grow? And the book says plants grow in the desert and plants grow in the ocean and it's all about all that. And you say, what is the main idea? They should be able to tell you, oh, it's all about where plants grow. And we talk about how usually the main idea is just 1 or 2 words or the title of the book. That can sometimes be difficult for them to kind of forget about all the tiny little details and really focus on the overarching main idea. And then details of the book. So ask them, all right, so what were some details from the book? And they should be able to tell you that, oh, plants grow in the desert and plants grow in the ocean. And sometimes they'll kind of say something that they already know from prior knowledge, like, oh, I know that moss grows on trees. And we'll say, okay, yeah, you're right. Show me where that is in the book. And so we really want to emphasize that whenever they're answering questions, they're referring back to the text, and their answers come solely from the text. So that's one thing you can do for nonfiction. What are 3 things you learned about the topic? How are blank and blank alike and different? And the big thing is for reading nonfiction text, if they're reading it and they're comprehending it and they're reading it fluently, they should be able to answer these questions after the first read. If they're reading it, maybe struggling a little bit or really focusing on decoding, and you take the book away and ask them some of these questions and they can't answer them, then they're really not ready to move on to the next level. So they have to be reading it fluently and consistently in order to comprehend it. So that's really a big basis of when a child moves up to the next level is if they can answer the questions without the book. So for our reading tests and things, we'll ask them similar questions and they cannot have the book. They read it 1 time only. So they really have to know the book and be reading fluently. For reading a fiction text, ask your child the following questions. Start at the beginning and tell me what happened in the story. So again, it's usually a book maybe that they haven't heard as much, or it could be a book that they know well. That's totally fine. We recommend taking the book away, covering it up, and saying, okay, start at the beginning and tell me what happened in the story. And it's really important, and this is something that we teach them, is to think of like one main sentence from the beginning, one main sentence from the middle, one main sentence from the end. A lot of the times they'll tell you specific details that they remember. A lot of the times they'll start with the ending because that's what is fresh in their mind. And we really want them to think about, okay, go back to the beginning. What happened first in the story? So that really just takes practice, repetition. So these are just things that you can do when you're reading nightly with them. Have them just start at the beginning and think about what exactly happened in the story. And again, if they're listening, if they're comprehending and reading it fluently, they should be able to do this with some practice. And these are all things that we're also working on with your child. So how did blank feel in this part of the story? The big part of this is how did you know? So a lot of times when something happens, they can tell you, oh, they're so sad. Well, how do you know that they're sad? And that can sometimes be a little tricky. It could be their facial expressions. It could be an event that just happened that would cause them to feel sad. What do you think would have happened if, and then this is a big critical thinking question about thinking, all right, what else could have happened? What are some details? Why do you think that could have happened? So we think that for this group of students, once they know their sight words and they can read fluently, we're really focusing on comprehension and thinking about critical thinking questions. And then once you notice that your child has mastered a lot of these things, you can have them start writing their responses. That is what they'll be doing in first grade. So that's kind of the next step. For right now, we would just talk it out and have those very important conversations with them about retelling and main idea and detail.
Okay, so for writing, it's similar to reading. At this point, your child may be able to write many sight words or sentences at this point and sound out words. So they're writing the sounds that they hear in words. And you may be asking, what more can I do to extend my child's learning at home? And these are some things that we are doing with your child as well here. So in the beginning of kindergarten, our first writing goal is that they draw a picture to tell a story. Your students more than likely are doing more than that already, and that's why you're in this session. So next we'll be focusing on sight word sentences with the students, and then we'll move on to writing several sentences to tell a story. After that, we go into the editing portion. So these are some things that you could work on at home. For instance, starting your sentence with a capital letter. A lot of times, they're writing capitals throughout their sentences right now and not paying attention to just starting your sentence with a capital and then using lowercase for the other words. Punctuation at the end. That is really hard for them to remember. And a lot of times in the beginning, we don't stress that as much because we're wanting them to get their thoughts and ideas out. But if they're able to get their thoughts and ideas out and on the paper, this is something that you could work on at home. Also, we always go back to practicing correct letter formation. We don't have handwriting anymore in school necessarily. I think everyone is fast forwarding to everyone typing on a computer, and everything will be done through word processing. But we do practice, even though it's not a grade in kindergarten anymore. And this is a little video app that we show the students to help them with their letter formation, just to practice writing those letters. Also, your child's teacher might talk about the top line and the bottom line on the handwriting paper, and the dotted line in the middle, and the letters that go within those lines and below the lines. And those are things that you could talk about at home. And about the detailed drawing, that will help your child put more details into their writing, actually. And we've talked to your children about labeling their picture so that they can use those words in their writing. And we've also talked, or they'll be introduced to speech bubbles. So what the actual characters are saying. A lot of times, you know, one of the first ones we do is a playground, and they're going down the slide and they're saying, wee, you know, things like that, so that they will use that in their writing. Okay, so academic language is something that we thought we would talk about with you. Our whole school was trained on academic language last year. It is to prepare students for college career readiness, and we've been having a lot of fun with it in our classroom. So some ways to practice at home is when you are conversing with your child at the dinner table, or you're having discussions about books, or you're talking about an event that you attended, you can encourage your child to use complete thoughts instead of answering you with yes or I liked it. More than just a simple yes or no. You can encourage them to tell why, or can you tell me more about that? Some of the academic language vocabulary that we use are words like compare, alike, different, because those are just some of the more basic ones, but those are words that they'll be practicing using in class. Sentence stems and starters, they're ways to help your child organize their thoughts so that they can actually express themselves. A lot of times they'll know the answer, but giving them the structure will help them to speak clearly about the topic and about what they want to say. So we usually read 2 books about Cinderella. One is a Chinese version of Cinderella, and then the regular traditional Cinderella. So this example is on that, and it says Cinderella is like Ye Shen because they both, and then Cinderella is different from Ye Shen because, so they're actually thinking about how the 2 characters are alike and different, but it just gives them the opportunity to insert their answer, but gives them the words to use as well. The second example is Cinderella was feeling after she wasn't allowed to go to the ball, and I know this because, and then that takes them back into the book so that they, you know, pinpoint that detail that we want them to have. Oops, that's it. All right. In addition, I think I'm going to get the lights real quick. We have handouts for you on the back table about